I grew up in church. When I was younger, my mom and my stepdad were a huge inspiration to me, and they're the ones that got me to start loving music. At a young age, I started singing at church functions and other things going around town. At the age of 11, that's when things took a turn for the worse. I was home alone, and my cousin happened to stop by. That day, everything changed because he raped me. I was scared, and I didn't know what to do and where to go. I began feeling alone, dirty, worthless. I started getting high to try to get rid of the pain, and eventually that didn't work, so I started drinking. And that led to sneaking out of the house and eventually into anger. My anger started growing stronger, and my mom and I started fighting a lot. And all the fighting started pushing my stepfather away, and eventually that completely ended the relationship, and it ended in divorce. That right there just crushed my whole world. The man that raised me, that I have all my childhood memories with, he was gone. After that, my mom and I started fighting even more, and I think that she blamed me for what had happened between her and him. Eventually, I started blaming myself. I continued drinking and getting high because I needed something to relieve that pain that I was feeling inside. After a while, though, it wasn't enough, and so I started cutting myself. I figured if I could cut myself and feel the pain on the outside, then I wouldn't feel it in the inside. Then it got to the point where I didn't even want to live anymore. I attempted to commit suicide several times, but every time I did, something would always happen or something would intervene. One day my mom, she came home and she told me that there was a new pastor at the church and that I should try it out, and she kept begging and begging, so finally I decided to go see what it was all about. As I sat there, I felt like the pastor was talking directly to me. That night I found myself talking to her and telling her everything. And that night was the first time I felt like some of that hurt was going away. She welcomed me with open arms and let me know that I was loved. So I began going to the youth group, and slowly the pain started to go away, and I started getting involved, and I got involved with the worship team. And then one day the youth pastor came and asked me if I wanted to start my own group. And I was ready for that challenge. I told him, of course. So me and the worship team, we started becoming really close and eventually became a family. And at last I was starting to feel like someone cared and that I was loved. One summer at Camp Cedar Ridge, I experienced the Holy Spirit for the first time. I spoke in tongues for the first time, and I felt the calling upon my life, and God told me that my calling was to be a worship pastor. That night, he also told me that it was time to forgive my cousin for what he had done. And for the first time, I felt like I didn't hate him anymore. And that was a huge step for me. Things started looking up and everything was going good and going according to God's plan. And one night, I was sleeping and I had a crazy dream. To this day, it still haunts me. But I had talked to several of the pastors and just other people that were really close with me, and they all told me the same thing, that now that I was in leadership, the devil was coming for me and he's there to bring me down. In 2007, I met this guy. He made me feel special and feel loved and feel things that I've never felt before. He wasn't a Christian, but he made me feel that love. One night things got really bad at home and I didn't really have anywhere to go. I had to leave and I didn't have a phone. I had nothing, so I walked over to my job and I called the one person that made me feel free and that I felt comfortable around. And that night, one thing led to another, and about 4 weeks later, I found out I was pregnant with my son. Immediately, I called the youth pastor and told him that I needed to step down and that I was pregnant. In one quick decision, everything I had worked hard for was gone. Once again, I felt like my life started crashing down and I didn't know what to do. Some of the people that I thought would be there weren't, and the ones that were, I pushed them away. I thought if maybe I can hurt them first, that they wouldn't hurt me. So now it was just me, my boyfriend, and our baby that was on the way. About 2.5 years went by, and another child came, and I still hadn't been to church. I blamed God for everything, and when I did go back, I was welcomed with open arms. I didn't think that they would, but they did. I started getting involved again. One of the worship pastor that was there at the time, she asked me if I wanted to start on worship team again, and I was so excited because I didn't think I would have another chance. So a few months went by and I started getting really involved, started going on a weekly basis and started to rebuild that relationship with God again. And I started feeling whole again. But I started feeling guilty. Because me and my boyfriend were still living together. We had 2 kids together. And I knew that we were living in sin. I brought it up and he kind of changed the subject. And then a few months went by and he told me he was ready. So we got married. And one night I was up leading worship and I felt the Holy Spirit again, and I hadn't felt that in a long time. And that night I just felt God speak to me that he still wanted me to become a worship pastor. He told me, the plan I have for you is still the same. It's never changed. So that night, confirmation after confirmation kept coming, and my husband came and picked me up, and we were driving home, and out of nowhere, he just says, you know that school you wanted to go to? I said, yes, and he said, well, if you still want to go, I think we should go. He's like, I'll move to Texas if you're ready to go. That right there was confirmation enough for me. As of right now, I'm continuing my walk with God, and it's just getting stronger and stronger every day. And I thank God for everything that he allowed me to go through, because if it wasn't for what I went through, I wouldn't be here and be the person I am today. I will be attending Southern Assemblies of God University in the fall of 2014, and I'll be getting my degree in worship leading and music ministry. And I'm so happy to finally say that I'm following God, and I can't wait to see what the future has to bring for me and my family. My name is Gina Stuart, and I am second.